I looked that up too, by the way. $1 in 1776 would be the equivalent of $36 now.
But how much ham is it?
That's true.
Damn, good question, Joe. What's the ham conversion?
Current time or colonial time?
Type in USD to ham and see what pops up modern day, and then we can just go from there.
Also, throw the Stanley nickels in there. They might be of interest.
You don't want to recruit bucks?
Welcome back, everyone, to S1E1, a show where each week we pick a different sitcom, watch the first televised episode, and forgetting anything we might know about the future run of that show, rate and decide if it's a show we want to greenlight or cancel. This week we're going to be talking about Making History. Making History went 9 episodes with only 1 season on Fox. Today we're talking about episode 1, which was called Pilot, originally airing March 5th, 2017. So to get things started, I'm Jay Gags. With me as always, the boys, Joe, Ferg, Nick, and Gordo. What's going on, guys?
Hey-o.
Yo.
We have ham.
I knew you'd be very excited with all the ham talk in this show.
I was like, I can't believe this is my show. This is so ham-centric.
You know what it made me think of, Joe? And I didn't look it up. I should have. What was mustard around?
Yeah.
Oh,
Like, when was mustard, commercially available?
ham doesn't really work without... It doesn't work as well without
Ham
mustard.
doesn't work, period.
How dare you?
Yeah, because mustard seeds are a thing.
According to Encyclopedia Britannica, the earliest evidence of mustard used as food comes from the ancient Indian Sumerian texts that stretch back to 3000 BC, so it was probably around in the 1700s, yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah.
And most importantly, or not most importantly, but important, I guess, to all our, I guess, just our American listeners, we actually, not everyone's included in this, but happy 4th of July, everybody.
Happy 4th, everybody. And you can include the British, because that's when we kick their asses. Screw you.
Yeah.
We have people who listen, no offense to the...
Well, they blew a
British people.
13 colony lead, so bam.
Yeah, but we still outnumber them in mass shootings, so, who really wins?
No, we're massa shooting up this area.
We love
Their
our English
asses.
fans. We don't love Gordo, but we love our English fans.
No, we like our English fans, just not today.
No, we still, no. Nope. Anyways, yeah, so we wanted to do something because the way things rotate, it's going to be rare that a show drops on the 4th of July.
And they wouldn't let me do a show on Independence Day, so...
So here we are with Making History, the short-lived Fox sitcom that went 9 episodes. I did not know the show existed.
Me
Nope.
either.
Yeah, this is Ghosted 2.0.
For real. It has a very Ghosted vibe, yeah.
But even crazier than Ghosted, we're all from Massachusetts. This is a show that takes place entirely in Massachusetts, about Massachusetts and the history therein, and none of us ever heard of it.
Well, if it ain't Family Guy, Fox ain't talking about it. Like, they don't advertise their shows.
It's true. It's like Fox does like some sports and Family Guy. It's really
And The
it.
Simpsons.
And The Simpsons.
But it's like interesting to think you put all this money, and listen, this show, we'll talk about it, I guess, as we go along, but there's some money in it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
They didn't skimp out. So,
Yeah, it definitely wasn't cheap to produce.
so why put all that money? You put all this money into his show and then you don't promote it?
Well, yeah, but I mean, maybe that's part of why it had such a short leash, It needed to do really well because it cost a lot of money to make, and then when it didn't, they were like, all right, see ya.
Yeah, but if no one knows it's on, you're not going to watch it.
Did it cost that much money to make, though? When you do like a period piece like that, there's like Plymouth Plantation and all those other places.
Yeah, but they're probably still in California. They filmed in Georgia, actually. The school was a college in Georgia. I saw that. So they're not up here, but I see what you're saying. But yeah, no, they don't get to just walk into those places and use it for a month at a time to film. They'd have to build it themselves.
But not just that, even like a lot of the little effects we saw, like, not that they did a lot, but you could tell they put some money into it. It wasn't done on like a shoestring budget by any means.
Yeah, the time machine stuff looks good. There's effects. There's
The duffel
bag.
No, but the way it looks when it comes in and out of time.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and then a couple quick stats. 6.3 on IMDb. Rotten Tomatoes critic score 92% and then a 71 audience score.
Oh, they paid the Rotten Tomato bill, huh?
Guess so.
I think that tracks. I think if you put 60, 70, and 90 all together, right? It's pretty middling at like probably 75, 80%. I think that kind of fits for this show.
I could tell you.
Yeah, I did quick math in my head. How off was I?
It's not that hard. It's like 73% right around there.
Yeah, 73.33 repeating. Repeating.
Math brain.
Jay. You didn't have the repeating.
Leroy.
Well, I'm sorry. I am human, but I've always prided myself.
You have always been good at math.
I'm decent at math. Yeah, no, I mean, decent scores. I mean, the critic score being as high as it is, we've talked about it before. Rotten Tomatoes, we can't be 100% of their metrics at times, but
Few grains of salt there.
but still. And then also just quick reminder, S1E1pod.com is where you can find all our social medias. If you want to follow us on Instagram and X, S1E1pod. Also rate, review, subscribe, do all those things. We also have a merch site up now. You can buy t-shirts, do that. Not to talk about that stuff too much. And to get back into the show, not a lot of information looking up on the show, but I thought there were a couple interesting things. Like the director of this episode, Jared Hess, is the guy who wrote and directed Napoleon Dynamite.
Yeah.
Have you guys been seeing those Napoleon Dynamite commercials lately?
No.
Is Uncle Rico in any of them?
No, it's just him, and he's doing what's the company, the tater tots, Orida or
Orida, yeah. Oh, that makes sense because that's where Napoleon Dynamite was filmed.
I'm going to go on record. I don't think Napoleon Dynamite's a very funny movie.
Yeah, that's not a movie that you would have thought was funny.
Saw it in the theater. Didn't get it then. Don't get it now.
You probably waited too long to see it though, because like the hype got so big about that movie so fast.
No, when I saw it, I didn't even know what it was.
Oh, really?
Yo, did
Yeah.
you see it in the mall? Did I see it with you?
No, you saw it with me in the mall.
Yeah,
Oh,
I saw
okay,
it in
yeah.
the up in the North Shore somewhere. I saw it with a friend of ours who lived up there.
No, I thought that was interesting. And then the executive producers, Phil Lord and Christopher Miller, you would know them as the creators of Clone High. They also directed 21 Jump Street and 22 Jump Street.
Nice.
I always think it's weird when there's directing duos. Not that it's necessarily a bad thing, but how do you pay them?
I think it's probably one flat fee.
Yeah, but like, if it was just one of them, would they get the same amount as the two of them?
Depends how good you are. I mean, it's not like it's a flat rate job. So,
Yeah.
I mean, depending on who you are, like you're going to get paid different amounts of money no matter what anyways.
Like, what do you think the Wachowskis were making on like The Matrix? Because those were huge
I'm sure they're
movies.
making a lot. Or like the Farrelly brothers when they were...
Oh yeah, the Farrelly brothers is a good example.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's probably examples where dual directors get a ton of money just because they're like the Farrelly brothers, right? They're so high that they're probably still making more individually than what some other directors in that genre are making solo, you know? So, you know, they might be getting over twice that amount. To get into the episode itself and jump right in, the show starts. We see this guy, Dan. Dan's the main character, played by Adam Pally, Pally.
I believe Pally's right, yeah.
One of his big credits, he did a lot of the Mindy Project.
I never saw a minute of that show. Is that a show we could do?
Yeah, I think so. I've been, we'll talk off air, but I've been stewing with some ideas for other theme months, and Mindy Kaling being involved in another popular show before that ties into some of the themes I had in mind.
Is it The Office? Are you talking about The Office?
No, all her sketch comedy stuff she used to do beforehand. We see Dan, he's scrambling in his office. It looks like it's a shed.
Is he a janitor, we're to gather?
I looked at this afterwards
know.
because at first I was like, is he like also a professor at this school? But he's like a facilities manager or something like that.
Okay, it was hard. I couldn't tell if he was a janitor or if he was a coach at this scene, right? Because
It was groundskeeper Willie.
Yeah, I thought he was like some sort of facilities, like janitor style.
Yeah,
thing.
that's basically what he does. And he's in his office shed, whatever, and he's like scrambling to fill up this duffel bag, and he's looking at the clock, and this guy Chris enters. Chris announces himself as one of the professors in the history department, and he's complaining about the heat. He needs the heat turned down because it's like super hot in there.
I feel him right now.
Yeah. And Dan's like, oh, sorry, man, it's 5 o'clock. I got to get out of here. He's like, it's only 3 o'clock. But when you look at the clock, it's set to 5.
This doesn't work, by the way. You can't just do this. I wish you could.
He has a time machine. It can be 5.
Well, we don't know that
Just
yet.
We don't know that yet, though.
Yeah.
Just saying. Not using his abilities well.
But yeah, his thing is, well, my clock says 5, so I'm out of here. And we see him like racing down the street, and he's in his car, and he's like upset with the interaction that he had with Chris. And he's kind of like mocking him, and you see him pull over, and he pulls over to like the sign like entering Lexington, Massachusetts, which, you know, again, we're all from Mass. And it was one of those legit Massachusetts town signs. Like, I don't know, does every state do that where like all our welcome to signs match across the entire state?
I don't think so.
Not sure.
I'm gonna say yes, just to be different.
Officially, maybe. I mean,
Yeah, I don't know.
officially, they probably have to, right?
No, why would you
It
have
doesn't have to look the same. Like a town could ostensibly make their own sign and be like, we voted for this one.
Well, towns do make their own. Like the town sign for our town is different than.
Only if you enter one way, but the other way there is a welcome sign that matches that welcome to Lexington sign.
But it's also on the other side too. It's on both sides.
But there is a sign, what I'm
Yes.
saying, that looks like this one.
Yeah. But I'm just saying it's probably a standardization thing, and then each town does their own. Has their own flavor, if you will.
Right, but all right, moving on. So he pulls up to the sign and he goes into like this little like ditch that's like right off the road. And you just kind of see like this quick little blast. And when the dust settles, we're now back in colonial times, and it pans out and you see him running out now dressed like a guy of that era in 1700s. And you see the sign now for Lexington in the same spot, but it's of that era.
Old timey.
And apparently, yeah, this man is capable of traveling time.
I liked this shot. I did like the going in and coming out with a different time and keeping the sign, like focusing in on the sign both times, I think was a really good move.
I thought it was a good way to transition without, you're not blowing the budget, but you can still make it look really good.
I just like to know the rules of his time travel, because like, why did he drive out there to time travel? And like later in the episode, he does it in front of his house. And I'm like, why didn't he do it inside of his house where it'd be more secretive?
Well, he was leaving work this time. I have a lot of questions.
Yeah. And later on, he mentions at one point that he bounced around through a bunch of different places, and this is the one that like worked for him. So I'm assuming that means that it's sort of like Back to the Future rules, where you go back in time, but you land in the exact same place you are. You can go back in time, but not in distance.
So my question, though, too, is that the clock that he had in his office, was time different back in colonial times?
No, I think the clock in his office was just a joke because he's a slacker.
Oh, I thought it was more he's trying to get out early to go visit his girlfriend, so we fast-forwarded the clock.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I thought that maybe had been a couple of hours in the future.
See, that would make sense if it was like a wristwatch or something, because it would be on him. But a wall clock that he has there, it wouldn't affect.
Okay.
I think that was just for the purpose of the early joke. But yeah, no, just in general, we know time travel is a thing in the show, right? As soon as we see this. And we'll get into it as we talk about some of the things that happen along the way. But their way of handling time travel, and I guess when you're watching a comedy, you got to take all this stuff with a grain of salt. But there's just this stuff that like makes your head scratch at times.
Yep.
But we'll get into them, I guess, as we go along.
I have some issues.
Oh, for sure. So we flash a little bit forward into the nighttime, and we see Dan talking to this girl, Deborah. We just covered a show with her recently.
Yeah, single parents.
Leighton Meester, and single parents. And I thought it was kind of funny because when we cover shows, we're usually kind of looking at each actor and maybe checking their IMDb's and looking at what they've done. And I didn't notice that you're not looking at him too crazy, but none of us picked up on the fact that the show existed.
We probably saw it, and because we didn't know the show existed, we probably just thought it was a movie or something.
Yeah, well,
We were just lured in by the Gossip Girl.
yeah, the name doesn't necessarily tip off the idea that it's a comedy either.
It is one of those weird what ifs, though, when you watch a show. Like, this happens to us a lot doing this show, where you watch something and you're like, I really like this, but then you think about, like, if this show continued, single parents wouldn't have probably happened, or would have been different, like the casting.
You could say that time travel would affect the outcome of history.
Sure.
Why did you say it like it was a joke? Was it a joke?
It was meant to be.
He started saying it and then realized he didn't know exactly how to word it. So he
Exactly.
went
Moving on.
So you just said something that was factual, but like as if it was a joke.
I was making a pun, Jay. I'm sorry that my humor is you're not on the wavelength as me.
I can say in full confidence I'm not on your wavelength.
He doesn't have your Riz, Gordo.
He doesn't.
So she's talking to Dan and she's like, oh, I'm so glad you're in town. I've never had so much fun at the Harvest Festival. She's like, can you show me that dance that you taught everybody tonight? And he's like, oh, the Bartman? It's so simple. That got me.
I laughed at that too. I also didn't realize, and I was like looking up what year the Bartman was. Do you know who co-wrote Bartman?
No.
Probably Conan O'Brien.
No, Casper Jackson.
What?
Yeah, so Michael Jackson, Matt Groening did an interview, I guess, a few years ago, and they brought it up, and he was like, yeah, Michael Jackson like co-wrote that.
That's weird.
It just did it uncredited. So our boy Casper, oh, hi everybody.
Yay!
Oh, are there any little boys hanging around in this plantation?
Did we ever confirm if Michael Jackson actually did the voice in that episode of The Simpsons?
He did not.
That's confirmed? Or he just never admitted it?
I didn't think it. No, I don't think so. I don't think it sounded like him.
I thought though that he also wrote the Lisa It's Your Birthday song. So I thought that was him.
I think he wrote the song, but I don't think he did. He played the character.
Well, it'd be weird to only like have to. Well, we'll have to do some homework on that, I guess, on this side.
I mean, I guess if you're like, oh, Michael Jackson did something weird and out of the ordinary that regular people wouldn't do, no way. Come here, Matt Groening.
So while they're having this conversation, two redcoats approach, and they get these guns pointed, and you get the halt. Who goes there? And he goes, halt to you, good sirs. Again, it was so dumb, but something about halt to you, good sirs, made me laugh.
I mean, one of the fun things about this show was that he just tries to speak like it's the 1700s and just can't quite do it, which I think you get a lot of mileage out of. It doesn't get old.
And then their way of bribing off the soldiers, Joe, with ham. I
would have walked right away.
Did you get excited at the sight of just giant ham in this episode?
He definitely just went, ooh, ham.
I certainly did. Also, that ham looked so good. That ham looked like cartoon ham, like Looney Tunes ham. Like it was the most perfect looking spiral ham I've ever seen.
Why do they love ham so much?
Because it's like diamond encrusted heroin to those people. I mean, they live in a time where everyone's throwing up and seemingly shitting everywhere. I don't think there's a lot of good, fresh food around. I think ham, if you're eating garbage and someone gives you ham.
I would have brought back pizza.
Then they would have thought you were a heretic or something.
Oh, God.
What is this treat?
This 12-inch disc.
What? Tomatoes on bread? The ham bribe works. Soldiers move on. So after they leave and he's talking to Deborah again, he's like, when did those soldiers get here? He's like, last night. He's like, no one rode around on a horse screaming, the British are coming? Like, no. He's like, oh, what about the king? People hate the king, right? He was talking about how he heard about, the potential for a revolution. And then she's like, this is why I love you. Who else would talk politics with a woman?
And so I noticed a comment on this show about this part, because Paul Revere didn't actually say the British are coming, because isn't everybody British, technically, in 1775?
No, they're American.
No, they're not.
They're not established yet. They are just,
yeah.
I mean,
it's just a colony.
But I wonder if at that point they might not consider themselves British anymore, because they're not thinking of themselves as countrymen.
The comment was much longer and much angrier, but it was there was a hidden good point in there.
If you are someone who's just very enriched in history and you're watching a show like this thinking everything's going to make sense, this is not the show for you.
Yeah, it's not going to be 100% factual.
That's like how we're going to overanalyze time travel and how they fucked everything up.
Oh, yeah, well, they fucked it up. But yeah, no, it's... So with this comment too is also when we're, these questions about, so Paul Revere didn't come last night, essentially, is we're finding out that something, most likely his traveling, is causing things to not go the way they're supposed to.
Now, I already have an issue, though, because we're going to find out later that she's Paul Revere's daughter, and he's bringing out, she doesn't go, oh, that's my father.
He doesn't say Paul Revere here. He says a guy on a horse.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. So she would have no way of knowing that it would have been him because he never did it.
I retract my anger.
Also, big reveal spoiled right there. He tells her he has to go. He has to fix something very important because now, again, he's realizing that things are changing. And she's like, where's it that you always go? And I don't know about you guys. I knew the joke before it happened. As soon as he said to infinity and he
of
looks
course,
off,
yeah.
I knew he was
yeah.
going to say to infinity and beyond.
Easy.
That was fun, but I think the Byzies is the icing on the cake of this scene.
It is very funny to have a colonial girl say Byzies, yeah.
I do like later on too, he's like, don't make fun of that. We're in that stage of a relationship. Like everybody understands that so well too. You're like, oh yeah, everyone's had a Byzies in their life.
I wonder if in like that time period of things like that, like what would, things of that nature must exist, right?
That's just human emotion.
Yeah.
Like it was still around in the 1700s.
Of course.
But I just wonder, like, back then, obviously the world's different from 20 years ago, let alone from, a few hundred years ago. But there's like, I don't know, where gender roles were so like women are not even fully real people in those eyes, like back then. Like, I wonder if just relationships were looked at very differently.
I think they were arranged.
Yeah, like how many couples were in love at that time?
Probably not a lot.
I feel like it's probably a smaller piece of that pie. It's probably a lot of our families must get together because here's a fetid calf and they'll take care of you. People also had like 1 million kids back then too, so you're pawning people off quick.
I think their method of thinking was, well, if I have 10 kids, 8 of them are going to die. So,
Right.
like,
Yeah.
got to keep this going somehow.
And also, too, they can help.
That's true.
Yeah, right.
Do you think maybe less people would die back then if that part of like if society then wasn't just like we should always have wars and the way we should do it is everyone should just walk directly into the gunfire and then when somebody falls the other people just walk directly into the gunfire. Do you think that insane way of doing wars?
No, it's the thing with the gun when they like jack it off and then they shoot.
The musket?
A musket.
Right, but everybody just walked into battle.
But you see,
Please, Professor Gordo, keep going.
He's tired today. I can
Start the
tell.
clock, guys. Let's see.
No, so the
Cue
muskets.
the playoff music.
No. No.
Say no again.
God. The musket, when it shot, it wasn't like a gun how we think a gun is today. Like, it didn't go as far. It didn't penetrate as deep. So, in theory, they could shoot at you and you could only get, like, nicked by it from that distance.
I think your cat disagrees.
Sure, but you could also hide behind a tree. You could take some cover.
And that's how we ended up winning because we did like guerrilla warfare. They did the
Correct.
all line up.
Yeah,
in
you
a
were
thing,
supposed
and
to
we
be
were
in like lines and like take a knee and then like let row 2 shoot. Yeah, it's crazy.
It's the very little I remember from history.
It's like, fuck this.
All right, time for us to shoot one another.
It's so
The first
weird.
time somebody saw a cannon when they were doing that was just like, oh shit, that's gonna get so many of us at once.
Yeah.
It's funny too because, well, it's not funny, but like, I mean, to think about like colonial time battles or medieval time battles, it's the same thing. Like they just rode at each other at one point, right? And to see like the gap in time and how nothing changed until like World War I, when like actual warfare like completely changed, is wild.
Trenches and planes and poisons, yeah.
Well, I mean, people even like, especially in like medieval ages, like not a lot of people actually died on the battlefield, like actually fighting. Most people died like in the ensuing rout because people couldn't fight like hand to hand like that for a long time. So they'd have to go in sort of shifts. I learned that the other day.
Plus, then it would rain and their arm would rust, and they'd all just get stuck in place. Like
That too.
Oil can.
Well, that's funny too. You know, it took civilization a long time, right? You like medieval, right? Knights in armor, right? And then you look at like the Revolutionary War, no armor, bullets. We were like, no, we should get rid of the thing that protects us. Like it took another like 150 years for people were like, maybe we should put like helmets on or something.
They didn't have anything in World War II like that, which
Right.
in the grand scheme was not that long ago. No armor. Like the technology or the thought of maybe put something hard in between me and the bullet existed. They just didn't do it.
Especially we just passed the anniversary of Normandy, right? Like those poor sons of bitches coming off those boats, right? Like
Yeah.
people were just getting picked off.
I saw a cool YouTube video on it the other day. I'll share it with you guys, but it talked about that exact same topic.
You remember what the presenter's name was on that YouTube video? Was it Adam?
Matt Easton with Scala Gladiatoria, okay?
Wow, okay. That's the one you remember.
You forgot Adam, though. What the fuck, man?
It's been a while since I've seen Adam's videos.
So now, moving along, we get to what I guess not really an intro. It's just like a really quick. You see the title of the show and like a quick thing of music. One of those quick ones. Not a real intro.
You see the Boston skyline, too, which since 2016 looks so crazy different.
And then in the next scene, Dan's back in like modern day, and you see him walking through the university that he works at. He spots a kid just sitting there eating. He's like, "Hey, what are you eating?" He's like, fish and chips." He's like, "Fish and chips? That's what British people eat. Oh my God."
I know it's stupid, but I almost spit took at him. That's what British people eat. Like, made me laugh so fucking hard.
And you know what, though? They never touched on this later. Was he just freaking out, or...
I think he's just freaking out, yeah.
It was tough to say. Well, here's the thing. All right. Anytime you go back in time, in theory, there's the butterfly effect thing, right? Like, obviously, like, any little thing's going to change everything. He comes back, and, like, at this point, Paul Revere didn't warn the British, and like the revolution might not happen, and he just comes back and there's like a kid eating fish and chips. But then he goes into history class. He walks into Chris's classroom. Chris is finishing up like a lecture where he's talking about John Hancock and stuff and the Declaration of Independence. It's like nothing's changed.
And that's my issue with this show, is it's very inconsistent with its time travel rules.
Because even if he hadn't made the ride, Paul Revere, Chris still knows about the ride, because he goes, "Oh, Paul Revere never made the ride," and Chris goes, "What do you mean if Paul Revere never made the ride?" Like so if Chris knows about the ride, then it happened.
History would have been changed. He would have, yeah.
You know, like I don't know. It's a kind of it's tough to do time travel without poking holes in things. Like, I get that, but this one was just like right in front of you, and you just let it go.
It's just one of those things that was a little frustrating. It's a comedy, and it's a goofy comedy at that. But then when you have, like, if it's focused around time travel, but you're not smart about it, it can be a little frustrating at times, because like you're kind of head scratching, going like, "Wait a minute, this doesn't make any sense."
Well, the easy way around that is make them friends from the get-go and have them go back from the start together. And then one time he goes back alone. "What did you do? Everything's different."
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
Or find some sort of a half-ass reason, even if it doesn't make sense, to explain why he would still have memories of all these things that didn't happen. You know what I mean? Like, something has to link what's going on versus what's happening modern day.
So at this point, I was like, maybe the time wave moves slowly and it hasn't hit that yet. Like, any changes he made. And then, I'm not going to spoil it because I already spoiled something, but the last scene kills that theory, because you know what happens.
Yeah. Obviously the way it ends, like, we don't know what happens in the next episode, so we don't know if there's a profound impact other than just that, but yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, my thing is that when he said Paul Revere, that could have just been like me going into a classroom and being like, "Oh, you know, Professor Doofus."
The way Chris handled all of this, we are to assume basically that Chris has full knowledge of the regular timeline that we're aware of.
Sure, but he never confirmed Paul Revere, so I took it as
he is. He's teaching it to the class.
And he is saying that he needs to, when he goes, we'll get there, but he needs to go and start the revolution because it didn't start. But he's teaching that it started. Like, it immediately goes back on itself. We can discuss the holes in it as we get through it, but I think we're jumping right now.
We already did say we do know at this point, just from the first time that he went back in time, that we've established Paul Revere didn't warn that the British were coming, and that whatever was happening with the revolution didn't start when it was supposed to. So we know that at this point. So all these things from this point forward, when he's back home after finding this information out, there should be some more significant changes, other than the fact that he saw a kid eating fish and chips, but nothing else about this teacher teaching history seems to be different. But yeah, anyways, he's finishing his lecture, bell rings, class empties out, And then Dan's like, hey, Chris, can I talk to you for a few minutes? I have some questions about colonial Massachusetts. It's urgent. He's like, you have urgent questions about colonial Massachusetts, which I thought was very funny.
That was funny, yes.
A fair retort.
And we get them like walking outside and they're talking back and forth. This is when it is addressed. He's asking, hey, what would have happened if Paul Revere never took his ride? And Chris does respond with what would have happened had he not what are you talking about? So he is telling him like, this is what would have happened, yeah. Which obviously isn't the timeline that we're seeing, right? Because he didn't do the ride, and that's not what's going on in modern day. So it is a little confusing in that regard.
You could make the argument, though, that they already went back and fixed it. So you're seeing the future of that past.
Time travel stuff is always complicated, right?
We're always going to trip over ourselves in any episode that is time travel because it's just so complicated.
I don't want to dig too far into that and just kind of maybe look at the show for what it is, because obviously there's giant holes, but we'll touch on certain things as we go along, of course. But I guess we can only dive so deep because you're never going to get like a straight answer. And there's no way to really know, right? One way or another, because we can't time travel.
Yet.
So they're talking. Dan's looking over and he sees that the Starbucks, someone puts out like one of those chalk signs. It's advertising tea. So now all the more so again, like with the fish and chips, he's like, wait, British people drink tea. Why is this an advertisement for tea and not coffee?
It's not that British people drink tea.
I like an idea that like, yeah, the revolution never happened, but then it kind of did happen because the history teachers were aware of it. So all that happened was Paul Revere didn't make his ride, and it just made modern day America a little more British. People just eat fish and chips and drink
slightly,
tea.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's just a hint extra British now.
And Starbucks does sell tea. So it's not that big of a stretch.
I get a green tea from Starbucks every day.
Yeah, they're always constantly advertising their teas.
Yeah. He's holding up this old piece of paper and he's saying to Chris, like, hey, I need you to come by my house. Like, I have all these old artifacts I want to show you. So he's enticing him with all this historical stuff that he's in possession of. And you see the car pull up to Dan's garage. And again, this is a nitpicky thing. But being from Boston, you can tell these are not houses from Massachusetts.
No, yeah.
No.
Just that style of home doesn't exist here.
Should be attached to his neighbors.
Yeah. So they finally go inside, and he's telling them, like, we got to go to the garage. That's where everything is. He's like, I'm not going in your garage. He's like, why? He's like, look, like you have a pile of dead squirrels on your counter. Like, those are gifts from my girlfriend. And you just see these dead squirrels with all these flies around them. And Chris agrees, like, hey, all right, I'll go into your garage, but you have to give me a knife. Because if anything happens, I'm going to stab you. Because he doesn't trust him. Like, obviously, it's a very weird situation.
Yeah.
And I mean, he has a fair point.
Well, yeah, they're not friends. They work together. And then the last time they interacted with one another, it was not positive. And it sounded like Chris introduced himself to him in that interaction. So they have no real rapport with one another.
He introduced himself to him and he said, I've met you a few times. So, like, he doesn't even matter to him.
So now they're in the garage and he's like, prepare to have your mind blown. And he shows them the duffel bag. And he's like, okay, a duffel bag? He's like, yeah, but it's a time machine. Tells him that he goes to the past every weekend, sometimes on Tuesdays. He's like, get in.
He pulls that duffel bag out of a big chest freezer. So at this point, my brain was like, oh, does the time machine have to be cold to work? Because he's keeping it in a freezer, and then it's never used out of the freezer again in the episode.
I didn't think of that, but yeah, that is weird.
I mean, electronics also like the cold a lot, more than they like the heat.
Well, there's not much, well, I guess, but there's also not much you're going to be able to do with it when it's in colonial times.
I don't know, Doc Brown seemed to be able to make ice cubes in the Old West.
He's a scientist.
So Dan's telling Chris, hey, jump in the duffel bag. I'll show you how it works. He's like, I'm not getting in a duffel bag in your garage. Are you out of your mind? And he's trying to tell him, like, well, how do I have all this colonial junk? And now he's showing him, the first thing was just like a postal rate chart.
I have a major issue with this part. All the stuff he shows him is all old and tattered, but he got it from the past, so it should look new.
That's a good point. I didn't think of that. Yeah.
That paper probably shouldn't be like tea-stained brown. Yeah, fuck me. God damn it.
Well, all right.
Really bothered me.
I'd say fair point, but also, I having not lived in those times, we're also not getting like printer paper white either.
No,
so.
paper was invented.
It wasn't bleached. Yeah.
Way before this, though. Like, way before this. They had good paper then.
It shouldn't be brown. Like
In
like
fact,
his
the
was.
paper was so good, it still holds up 300 years later.
Yeah.
Longer.
So
That's
yeah.
true. There's lots of old books hanging around.
Not papyrus.
So, well, in any event, he's showing him like a postage chart, and then he's showing him what did he have? A pipe and a clock. Yeah. So he's showing him all these things from that era, though, that Chris is very excited to see. But then he keeps throwing them on the ground and breaking them to be like, I don't care about any of this stuff. Like, I can get a ton of it. Like, I can go there whenever I want and get more stuff.
This is also the Back to the Future thing. This is like bringing back things that are of value.
Yeah. It changes. Like, everything should, in theory, change stuff. Like, anytime you move or do anything, yeah. But for the sake of argument, here and in this world, it apparently doesn't have that kind of effect. But he's telling Chris, hey, I'm offering you a chance to start the American Revolution. You know, even if there's like a 0.00001% chance that I'm right about this, like, don't you owe it to yourself to try this out? So now we cut to the two of them laying in that bag together, only like outside. And I was thinking, though, like, the duffel bag is kind of the perfect vessel for a time machine, right?
Easy to hide.
It's like, yeah, easy to hide. You can like bunch it up. It's not going to take up a lot of room. You could carry it around with you. Like, if you built like a booth, like, what are you supposed to do when you get to the other location? Like, bury it every time?
Yeah, well, look at Bill and Ted, right? It looks pretty weird when the phone booth just keeps showing up in places, right?
Yeah, but that's because they're too dumb to know how to use it. The phone booth can turn into anything it wants. It looks like a phone booth because it's in our time when Rufus brings it down.
Iron Maiden. Excellent.
Yeah.
They get in there together, turns it on, we get that flash. Now we're back in colonial times. Immediately, Chris starts to puke. He's like, oh yeah, I forgot to tell you. Like, the past smells like poop because there's duty everywhere.
I really appreciated this, right? Because that's not the stuff we talked about, right? We're from the earliest part of the country being settled by people like that. So there's all sorts of villages and things you can go to on the East Coast, right? And never once as a kid when you're doing it, they're like, by the way, there was no toilet. You know, like it would have been a pretty gross, disease-ridden place.
Oh, yeah.
It's definitely one of those things it's definitely an overlook. Yeah, it must have smelled terrible. You just don't think about it.
Right.
I assume it smells like New Orleans. Like, remember when we went and everything smells like... Yeah, it smells like vomit and horse shit.
Yeah.
And humidity, the waves of humidity carrying it, yeah.
No offense, New Orleans.
And then we get another scene, and it's the two of them like walking like into the main area of town, both like, you know, fully dressed in, you know, appropriate era clothing. And Chris is obviously amazed to be in the past, right? He's like, this is awesome. And he's like, what is that alcoholic eating a pumpkin? And you just see a dude just like on the ground.
That was a very fun aside. I know that we sometimes hate the like, hey, remember that time? Or the quick cut things, but this did really laugh. I think we laughed.
It was like within the world. It was like actually in front of them. So like, I'll take it.
It was stupid, but it was probably the hardest I laughed in the entire episode. It was just a guy eating a pumpkin for no reason at all.
And then now we're still seeing like there's British soldiers all around. The revolution was supposed to start 2 days ago, and they're still very much like, you know, walking about the area patrolling. Chris is like, hey, you know, some of the founding fathers, they used to gather at a place called Buckman Tavern. And Dan's like, oh, I know Buckman Tavern. He's like, yeah. He's like, yeah, you know, I got trashed there recently. He's like, you like the party? He's like, oh, I've been known to have a few white wines. And he's like, oh, God. So
if you want, we could do an S1E1 field trip. It's still operated as a museum.
Yeah. I've been
Buckman
there.
Tavern?
Yeah.
Oh, I would legit check that out.
Yeah. They have all like the old taps and stuff in there too.
Where is it?
In Lexington.
Can you get a drink there?
No, it's just a museum. I don't think you can get a drink there.
Oh.
I went to the gift shop there.
You can get a drink in the gift shop?
Yes, it's a very expensive bottle of water.
Yeah, I was going to say you get like a Coke or a water.
Well, I can only imagine. I mean, me and Ferg were in Philadelphia not that long ago, like a few months ago. And we were like going to the gift shops to, you know, bring stuff back for family members. And oh my God, I'm sure it's similar in a lot of in Boston too, but like the most boring things you could bring back home because it's all like historical stuff.
Yep.
You got to remember, though, it's boring to you because you also live in a historic area. You know what I mean? There are people who don't have that kind of stuff at all.
No, but like there was a point where I was trying to find something like, oh, what'd be a cool thing to grab for my niece? And it's like nothing. There's nothing that a 7-year-old wants here.
Yeah, they always like magnets.
I don't know. They had that little eagle. They had that little eagle thing that balances on your finger.
Those things are so cool.
Did you guys have those as a kid? I had one.
Yeah, they're awesome.
They're still fun. Just saying.
Yeah. Maybe I should have bought that then. We flash later. They're walking through the woods. They're on the way to the tavern, but we find out that Dan wants to pit stop and see his girlfriend really quick. We hear her like off in the distance, like, and they run to each other and embrace. And she's like, "Hey, I got you something." And it's just like the head of a bear, like one of those, like, I don't know what those are called. I mean, it's being advertised as a hat, but it's like that bear head that you put on top of your own head that has, like, for warmth.
It's also the whole bear's back too.
Yeah.
Like a cloak?
Sure.
And she said she disguised in a female bear carcass and then slaughtered the male when he became aroused.
No, I'm aroused.
Oh,
Okay,
you're into bear play. So the idea of it, in theory, first off,
Ferg keeps typing in bear and getting different results than he wants when he goes to the website.
Yeah, it's like Fozzie in that Muppet show.
Yes.
but yeah, this poor bear, he thought he was going to get some. Next thing he knows, he's being hacked up by a human being hiding. And he's like, "Oh, well, I don't have a gift for you, but I did write another song." She's like, "Oh," and then he starts to sing "My Heart Will Go On" by Celine Dion because they don't know that song exists at this time.
That's the song of eternal love.
I mean, it works.
No, it's a song of love until, the boat sinks and then she just drops him in the ocean because she can't make room for him on a fucking door.
A door that could have held like 10 people, yeah, if she just sat straight, but...
Yeah, she let him die, but also, like, plenty of other, like, thrashing in the water people who could have gotten pulled up.
not just him, yeah. She let a bunch of people die because she wanted to be alone.
But she gets to die all happy in her bed, an old lady. Fuck that lady.
Yeah, and she can't even give this guy the gem he's been looking for his entire life. She'd rather drop it in the ocean. Man, fuck her.
It's funny because I just saw Titanic for the first time, like,
Wow.
3 months ago. Yeah.
Really?
Like, I'd obviously seen it in chunks, like, just because of its existence. It's on TV a lot. But I never, like, sat down and, like, watched it. I've come to the same conclusion. She sucks. She's just a shitty fucking person.
The movie does get good, though, the second the boat hits the iceberg.
Also, if she just stayed on the lifeboat, Jack would have lived because he could have got on the door and then they both would have survived.
There's a lot of different avenues at which he may have survived, yeah.
Hey, speaking of James Cameron, he made that, and he also made a much better movie about time travel than this show, Terminator.
If we're going to pick apart time travel, again, Terminator is all founded by the idea that John Connor sent someone into the past to fuck his mom to have him. So there's a little bit of a time loop there, too.
While wearing a homeless guy's pants with no underwear.
And that.
There's a lot going on in Terminator 1.
Back on the Titanic thing real quick, do you guys ever see those weird reels like pop up of that guy who's collecting like as many copies of Titanic on VHS as humanly possible?
Yeah. What a weirdo.
It's so weird, but I can't not watch them when they pop up.
Same. I thought you were going to say the one of him when they replaced Rose with a cat. That's my favorite Titanic
I've seen
one.
that too.
I know it's stupid, but my favorite Titanic meme thing that comes up all the time is when she's looking at the picture that Jack drew of her, and it's Leonardo doing
like
her
a
from
kindergartner.
behind. He's got the Leonardo meme face where he's smiling. I don't know why that's so fucking funny, but it's so funny. And it's like Instagram knows once a month I'm having a bad day, and they're like, "Here you go, buddy. Remember this? This will make you chuckle."
So while she's being serenaded with "My Heart Will Go On," she happens to spot Chris in the woods and gets startled and throws like an axe at his head, which does the thing where it goes through his hat and like punctures so the hat's stuck to the tree. And when she's trying to figure out who he is, Dan's like, "Oh, that's Queequeg," whatever his name was.
I think that was it. You know what I just realized that I think would have made this show more popular? If they had just cast, and I'm not saying that there's anything necessarily wrong with the two main guys they cast. If they had cast anybody with just a little more anybody more recognizable, I think it might have caught on a little better. But these two are just so unknown, as far as I'm concerned. Anyways, I don't know if you guys know them for anything.
You can't say that though, because Ghosted had a good cast.
I was going to say it's him, and Ghosted's kind of the example.
True.
Yeah. It was a similar situation they had, and they had name value for both of their main stars.
Okay.
And they just didn't want to promote it.
Let's get in the duffel bag. We'll go back. We'll be the casting directors, and we'll see what happens.
Did he name him Queequeg after the character from Moby Dick?
Yes.
Yeah, I think so.
Oh, really? Yeah, I didn't even think about it.
He's not dumb, right? Because he knows things like that, and he knows enough about the revolution, and he also knows, like, to be like, oh, he's from the West Indies. Like, he has historical knowledge and context for some things, and then none
I don't know,
because
I am dumb and I knew that.
Yeah, but didn't you major in history? Oh, no, that was English, right?
Moby Dick was a book last time I checked.
Here's an interesting thing, too, because we keep kind of comparing the fact that, like, this got really poor advertising and it being a Fox show, and we keep mentioning Ghosted. Those shows both came out the same year.
Yeah, both one season, both kind of forgotten about by history.
And, like, both shows by, I think, arguable standards on, you know, regardless of how we vote down the road, both could have had much longer lives, I think, if seen by the right people.
What network was Ghosted?
Fox. They're both Fox, and they both came out in the same year.
So I think if there's anything we've learned, it's that Fox's success rate is not very high.
But it's not that the shows are bad, it's just they don't know how to get them in front of people.
Yeah, so it's more, I guess, about the network.
And they also are not really involved in, like, these, like, streaming wars right now. You know what I mean? Like, they're kind of like, they have their stuff on stuff, but there's no, like, NBC has their thing, and we have Netflix and Hulu, but there's no, like, Fox dedicated.
Disney owns Fox.
Yeah, but they're not. So, but, like, what's Disney's, other than, like, Disney Plus, where they have
Hulu.
But is Hulu owned by Disney? Or are they just in, like, a deal with them where it's like
it's
bundled
owned
together?
by Disney, and then a percentage of it is owned by Comcast, I believe. But now Comcast, they have to buy Comcast shares. It's complicated. So Disney will own 100% soon.
Maybe they'll rebrand and they'll kind of change some stuff, because they'll probably lose some content with that deal. So maybe they'll have to add some content.
Will they finally put back what's her face's butt from the end of Splash? Do you remember this?
Yeah, they got rid of her butt crack.
You've brought it up before.
Yeah, like that's the insanity where it's like Disney Plus was a little too like they were leaning too hard into the G-rated for dumb stuff like that. But then they got Punisher from Netflix. They're like, no, this is our property. We're keeping it. So you can't see Daryl Hannah's like tiny little butt that shows up at the end of that movie, but you can watch that.
They extended her hair so it covers her butt.
But Punisher, he's just murdering people constantly. Like, it's so weird, the, like, yeses and nos in that.
Same thing with The Mandalorian. Like, the first scene in The Mandalorian is some guy getting, you know, crushed in half by a door.
But do you see his butt?
Well, no.
He's explaining that Queequeg is someone that he's going north. He's helping him. Because I don't know if we mentioned before, but Chris is black. There were it'll come up later, but the second they got there, I was kind of like, how's this going to work? You know, putting a black guy in the situation. So I'm glad it was eventually addressed, because I thought, like, early on, I was like, historically, he wouldn't just be walking around in, like, this, like, fine colonial suit, just walking around, going to pubs and stuff.
And also, he's a smart history teacher. He should know that, too. He should be like, hey, I should be a little more cautious here. People are probably not going to be super stoked to see me.
But yeah, the argument is that he's going to be helping him go north. And he, for whatever reason, part of, like, Dan's cover-up, he doesn't want him to talk at all. So he's, like, making all these weird excuses as to why he can't speak.
I don't understand that.
Yeah.
Well, I think because at that time, like, if the age he was, if he came from the West Indies, he wouldn't speak English, and he wouldn't speak it with no accent. Like, that's where the joke is here, where she starts speaking Dutch to him, because she just assumes that's what he would speak from there. So I think it's maybe just... I think if it was a show that was even 50 years later, you'd be able to have him speak and not have an issue.
She eventually has to take off because they're on their travels, and the two are talking, and he's like, so you went back in time to use, like, Celine Dion songs to just impress some girl? He's like, no, it's like, you know, it's just, you know, with these colonial people, sometimes I use things from the future to make them like me more. And Chris is telling him how pathetic that is. I guess, I get it. You kind of have this giant tool bag of things, you know, especially within the arts and stuff, that you can use at your disposal that no one will have ever heard or know of. So smart. It's not the first time that's been done either in time travel related things. We saw it in Hot Tub Time Machine. There's also that weird, what was that weird movie with, like, was like an Indian guy who like was the only guy who knew the Beatles songs, and like so he just kept like pretending he wrote them.
Oh yeah. I forget what that is. I've heard of it though.
Not ringing a bell for me.
It was like a weird alternate universe where the Beatles never happened, but he knows
like
all the songs.
It was like recently too.
Probably like 7-8 years now when you think about it, because time is weird. But
I think the best example you already gave was Hot Tub Time Machine with Lou.
yeah, it's the same idea though. Yeah, you're using your knowledge of present day to affect the past with songs and stuff like that.
Kind of like Booster Gold, the greatest superhero in DC.
Oh, it was called Yesterday.
Okay.
Real quick, Hot Tub Time Machine. Why didn't Lou age more?
Because when he went back in time, he was in his kid's body. We were just seeing him as an adult.
That's right.
So.
Thank you. Okay. All right.
Yeah, they see each other. They see themselves in the mirror early, and that's like the only time they like bother to show them.
Yeah,
like,
I forgot about that aspect.
Oh, they do like the quantum leap thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I know
I've never
what we're
seen
all
that
thinking.
before.
I know what we're all thinking.
Oh, the wrestling episode with Terry Funk. Yeah.
You're all thinking it too, listening. I know you are.
So it's funny you mentioned Quantum Leap too, because I kind of thought about that with this show. Once I saw it, this was after I watched, and I'm like kind of just doing the homework, and you see like Joe had mentioned like there's Al Capone and they're going through different eras. I'm like, oh, so it kind of got a little bit of a Quantum Leap thing going with it, right? Where it's not going to be dedicated to. I originally just thought this whole show was about colonial times, but it turns out that's not the case at all.
Budget wise, like spanning times is also incredibly more expensive.
Weird, because the trailer for the show only shows the colonial times. When we watched the thing, like, oh, look at this show, it only showed stuff from this time period.
Yeah. I had obviously no idea until after we watched, but I would have done a show like this, I think, more based on that idea of like every season is a different time, like
Blackadder.
Kind of like Blackadder, but like keep the main characters consistent in themselves. You know what I mean? Whereas Blackadder, like Rowan Atkinson was a different person all the time, but like have it so they keep like every season's a new adventure for them. Almost like Trial and Error that we did too, like how that like the second season was same characters, but now we're on a new case. So almost something like that.
I wish that it was able to go on longer, because I mean, if then you had a whole season where it's 1920s Al Capone, John Dillinger, like that's super fun. You could also do the 50s thing and then throw a bunch of Back to the Future references into it.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of options. It's just not enough time to do them.
Just gotta tighten up them time travel rules.
Yeah.
It's your cousin, John Hancock. I got that new sound you were looking for.
Anyways, we cut later on, and now the two are at the tavern. Chris is excited because some of the founding fathers are there, and he's like pointing a bunch of them out. And he's like, you know what? I'm going to like give them a speech to rally and revolt. And this is the first time it's at least mentioned, because now Dan's like, I've been here a lot. I'm not sure if these people are going to listen to you. He's like, no, I think I got it. He stands up and he's like, pardon me, gentlemen. And then the bartender just starts yelling, slave, slave, who brought a slave in here?
I was expecting it, and I still couldn't help but laugh at it. It's just so absurd.
Yeah.
It was just, I was glad, listen, I was glad it was at least addressed, because, when you're going to do some sort of a timepiece, there has to be a little bit of acknowledgement here that this guy would not be walking around in colonial times unnoticed.
What destroyed me is he was so good and so quick. They'll yell slave at him, and he's like, well, good to see Boston hasn't changed. That was so fucking funny.
So now he's like, he's trying to pull through this, and he's doing the taxation without representation. He's thinking this is going to get all these guys like inspired. They just start booing him.
Yeah, they get mad because he insults the king.
Well, then he insults the king.
One guy also just yells out, boring. It's so fucking great.
Not funny.
You're a blockhead, Rocco.
So now Dan's telling him, like, say something from a movie. And he starts doing like a Chris Tucker Friday thing.
He does an amazing Chris Tucker impression.
I felt like that was one of those things where they probably asked him, like, hey, can you do any like impersonations or anything? And that gets no response either. So he's going, a white movie. So he just starts going, show me the money. Show me the money. Which, in fairness, not a white character. He only half-whited it there.
Yeah, gets Cuba Gooding Jr.'s
Cuba
character. Yeah.
But he starts shouting, "Show me the money," and these guys eat it up. They don't even know what the fuck it means, but now they're all just chanting, "Show me the money," too. They're joining in. Someone goes, "Show somebody the money."
They're not wrong. White people love Jerry Maguire.
I mean, people were making "Show Me the Money" jokes for like 2 straight years after that movie came out. Like,
I think it's a pretty dog shit movie, personally.
I agree.
I'll say this: I've never seen it.
Really?
I don't think you need to.
You know what, Jay? You don't need to. It's just
that's
not
the thing. All
good.
you guys just made it pretty clear that I don't need to see it.
Yeah, I wouldn't waste your time.
But watch that scene on YouTube, all right? It changes your life.
Yeah.
If you want to see a good Cuba Gooding Jr. movie that's not super depressing, you just need to watch Rat Race over and over
They're
again.
gonna say, like, what was it, like Snow Dogs?
I thought you were going to go with Radio for some reason.
Radio. Like, Boys in the Hood. It's a real heart warmer. Very funny.
I've seen the sweeted version of that one.
What's happening to our hood?
So now Chris sits back down with Dan. Dan's like, "Hey, maybe like we should just like talk to my friends John and Sam. He's like, they're pretty big players around here." And he's like, "Wait, John Hancock and Sam Adams?" He's like, "Oh yeah, it's them." And we cut to the 4 of them all together, and now they're all sitting there.
Jay, one of your fellow castmates from Ghostbusters 2 here.
I was gonna say Sam Adams, played by Neil Casey, who you would know from the 2016 Ghostbusters movie. Some might argue the best Ghostbusters movie.
You might argue.
Yeah, I don't even think the actors in that movie would have argued that.
I bet Neil Casey wouldn't say that.
Neil Casey and I are in a scene together. Like, the best you see my face in that movie is right next to Neil Casey. I'm standing right next to him.
He told me you're a piece of shit.
Well, you know what? I didn't like him either.
Ferg called him before the recording.
I was trying to get him as a guest star on this episode, and he was like, "Is Jay gonna be there? Fuck him."
I'll try to upload on our story or something, the screenshot, because it's like me and him like side by side, which is funny.
Right, you know you have that saved already.
I do. Obviously, I have it saved. I was in a fucking movie. You would do the same thing. You do the same thing.
I'm saying you said I'll try to get it. Yeah, I know you already have it, so there's no trying.
I'll try to get it on our Instagram. Like, if I remember to do it. Like, it's not like I'm not going to be like anxiously waiting for like, what day can I post this picture of me? But
I disagree. I think that's exactly what you're going to do.
We all met up one time to watch wrestling in your backyard, like, I don't know, maybe 2 or 3 years ago, and on the giant screen, and we were watching wrestling, and then all of a sudden you were like, "Oh, who put this there?" And you had the scene and played it on the giant screen. You're like, what the fuck, man? Nobody wants to see this.
Again, if any of you were ever in a major motion picture like myself, you'd be like excited about that. Regardless of how you may feel about that movie, going to a movie theater and seeing yourself on a big screen is pretty cool. I'll leave it at that. It's a cool experience.
We're not arguing that. We're arguing the fact that you're so nonchalant. "Oh yeah, maybe I'll do it." But you're exactly what you said you weren't going to do is get excited about it, plan when to post it, is exactly what you're going to do.
Yeah.
No, because I've had 3 years to like find an excuse to post things like that, and I haven't.
And not only that, Jay, but now my wife has been bugging me to watch that movie, and I will not watch that movie out of spite.
I'll send you an 8x10 if you want.
Oh, God.
I mean, you can address it to my wife. I'm sure she'll love it.
You can hang it up next to that framed picture of Nia Jax that you have, the autographed Nia Jax picture I got you.
I'll put it next to the doodle taking a shit.
Oh, man, you broke Gordo.
Well, yeah, it's because Gordo doesn't think anything on earth is as funny as Gordo. So when you mention something like that. But anyways, to get back into this, that now they're sitting at the table with these two, and they're asking like, "Hey, have you guys heard anything about Paul Revere?" He's like, "No, he's like sort of fallen off the map. Like, we haven't seen him in a few weeks. He's probably dead."
Which, to be fair, in that time,
well, yeah,
like Nick had brought up earlier, right? Not the highest lifespan back then.
And then you have like in real life, Sam Adams wasn't actually making beer, right? You know, but I guess the tie-in here was.
Is the joke though supposed to be that beer is terrible? Because Sam Adams beer is dog shit.
No, I don't think that's a joke. And some Sam Adams beers aren't bad.
Yeah, they got some good ones.
Not a fan.
it's subjective, right? It's all like based on personal preference, and Sam Adams makes a lot of different beers. So I mean,
I like a good Sam Summer. It's refreshing.
I always like the coastal wheat.
Well, the cherry wheat's good too.
Those are heavy.
That one?
Those are pretty heavy.
I like Jerry.
I just don't like heavy beer.
The Porch Rocker is not bad.
They do make a hazy, I think it's hazy summer, non-alcoholic now. That's decent.
I had one. It wasn't bad.
Do they make non-alcoholics for all their flavored ones?
No, they just make that one right now.
No, just that one.
Because you got to remember, like, beer is still like mostly is just flavored by the things that make it alcohol. So it's like, it's tough to emulate, specific. You can emulate styles of beer, but to like then go into like the nuances of certain different IPAs or whatever, like it'd be really tough to do that all non-alcoholic.
I honestly think that's why it's so impressive when people make one that just tastes like beer, like the Corona one or the Heineken one, where they can make it just taste like a regular sort of beer, not like an IPA or something. You can still add hops into a water; it'll start tasting more and more like an IPA.
Gross. They do make that. Lagunitas makes that. It's called hop water.
I tried it. I didn't like that one.
I've had like hop teas and like hop waters. Like I like all those, but I'm like an IPA drinker. So, but anyways, they're kind of doing the Sam Adams joke because Sam Adams beer, obviously. So now, real Sam Adams, you have John Hancock going to Chris. Hey, did you try Sam Adams' new beer? He's like, no, or would you like to try it? So he's excited. He's like, yeah. So they hand him this large bowl or whatever that it's in. Like it's almost like a vase. And he takes a big sip of it, and coming to find out, he just took a giant sip of piss.
He's a historian. He couldn't tell that was a chamber pot.
He should have known that immediately.
Yeah.
Well, he could have been like,
I guess, overwhelmed by the experience.
Yeah, he's in front of his idols. They're asking him to try the beer. Like, who knows? It could be clean and just be used for beer. Who knows?
You say that, but I say there's no such thing as a clean chamber pot. Once it's been used once.
But it may not, but it may never have, you don't know that. It could have been a fresh one. These are guys of high stature in those times. But, that aside, it was pee. So he drinks that. They get a big laugh out of it. Turns out everybody's fallen for it at one point. It's just kind of one of those jokes that they all do.
I like, though, have the bit where like everyone screams slave, right? And you do actually have him be like, guys, we talked about this, right? And then for Sam and John to give him the chamber pot and be like, everyone did it, kind of shows that they're accepting
that
him.
They're not
right away.
singling him out. Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, they're not being like, they're not racist. They're not like,
I like the idea that this one guy cured racism. We had a talk, guys. Like that never happened.
He had a talk with Ezekiel, the bartender. Now, like every bad thing that happened is like racism and slavery going on never happened.
The two are asking Dan, like, hey, we heard you've been courting Deborah Revere, you sly cat. And that's the reveal that we find out that Deborah is Paul Revere's daughter.
So I Googled it if Paul Revere has a daughter, and that's actually her name.
Oh, was it really?
Yeah.
Did she look like Leighton Meester?
She was probably like 8 in real life at that time or whatever.
And still probably got married.
Also true.
Also true.
Can't look up pictures because there was no cameras back then.
Yeah. But then after the reveal of, the fact that he's dating his daughter, it just kind of ends with John Hancock and Sam Adams saying, hey, we got to head out. And I guess they're going to some wild satanic orgy in the woods.
That they're going to deny they went to.
Kind of a weird way to end that scene, but, whatever.
Is there like a conspiracy theory that that's what they did?
Not to my knowledge.
I mean, there's always stuff with the founding fathers and all those people that there's, paganism and Satanism and...
Yeah, man, that's why the fucking goofy eye thing's on the $1 bill.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at everything Illuminati starts with, what the founding fathers started doing.
Also, Deborah Revere was born in 1758, making her 17 or 18 in 1775.
Oh, perfect.
This pervert.
That was... For marriage back then, they were probably getting married underage.
Yeah, but he's from the future.
No, but I'm saying for that time, she's the right age for her to be in a marriage situation.
Oh, yeah. No, she's too old. Yeah.
Yeah, if anything, yeah.
Yeah, she should have like 9 kids already.
So now we cut to the following morning, and Chris and Dan are talking. We find out that they're going to visit with Paul Revere right now. And they walk in, and they see him like he's like working on something with metal, right? He's so you hear like the pounding of the metal work.
He's smithing.
They're like, oh shit, it's Paul Revere. Like, I know. And they're like, take a selfie. And they like raise the camera up while his back is towards them to like take the selfie, which I mean, I get the joke and I did find it funny, but they didn't even have this type of reaction with all the other guys that were just around. Like,
who would have happily taken pictures with them.
Right. Like when they were in a room with all of the founding fathers.
They couldn't have been like, hey, Sam Adams, let's take a quick photo. And then you can't pull out a cell phone.
Well, I don't know. They're into Satanism. You know, you can just
That's
write
true.
Write that off as the devil's work.
Look at this fun box I have, and you take a picture. I'm going to say what it is.
And it erases all the memories. I need you to look at this.
Who's that? Tommy Lee Jones?
That was a Tommy Lee Jones impression.
Why did you turn him into James Vanderbeek?
No, I don't want your life.
I don't want your life.
So they take a selfie. Paul Revere notices it and he turns around and he's like super creepy. Like he's giving off kind of like Nick Cage and Moonstruck vibes.
He looks like the guy from No Country for Old Men, whatever that dude is with the long hair.
Tommy Lee Jones. Are you talking about Tommy Lee Jones
He's
again?
the guy with the long hair.
Javier Bardem.
Yeah.
Yes.
I don't see that at all, by the way. He doesn't look anything like Javier Bardem.
Yes, he does. Side by side.
He has a beard.
Grizzly Adams did have a beard.
But looking up this movie, Brett Gelman, who I would say most people probably know from Stranger Things now, but he's been doing things for years. He's in a great movie called The Lemon, but he's in a movie that just came out this month about the Oklahoma City bombing, like a really dark movie where he plays Terry Nichols, like Timothy McVeigh's partner. And after seeing him in this, I'm like, oh, I bet he'll be fucking terrifying in that movie.
Paul Revere is Brett Gelman?
Yeah.
I did not even notice
I didn't
that.
even notice.
Yeah, you can't tell because of the wig. He looks kind of different. Yeah.
He's amazing. Yeah.
Yeah, that guy's awesome.
And they're telling him, hey, we need to talk to you about something. And he's like, we're thinking about waging war against the British. And we thought that you could and he cuts them off. He's like, the British? Like, do you have any idea what's going on in my life right now? And they're like, no. And he's like, I arranged for my daughter to marry this blacksmith. And now I find out she's sneaking around with some, did he say blackers?
I thought that's what he said. It's hard when you watch things like this and you can't get...
Blaggart or braggart.
Yeah, I don't know the terminology enough, so it's tough to pick out the word, but essentially he's just saying, hey, my daughter's sneaking around with some guy, she was supposed to get married and he's pissed off. And obviously that guy is Dan, who's in the room, and Paul Revere is creepy as fuck, so he's very uncomfortable by the situation. This was the one scene that was a little too goofy for me, though, is when he mentions her. He's like, what do you know about my daughter? And he just goes, ham? And throws a ham up in the air. Was that just a desperation? Ham cured everything?
I think this was, and I'm team ham for life. I think this was one ham joke too many.
Yeah.
They went to the well with it a little bit.
Thing is, it's the British they want Paul Revere to do his famous ride, but the British are already there. That damage is already done. They need to start working on the next plan.
That's a good point too. If he starts riding around yelling the British are here, people are going to be like, yeah, we know that, man. Thanks.
We're aware.
Bunch of red coats hanging out.
He's got a time machine. Just go further back and stop yourself. I'm screwing shit up.
I think we're to get that he can go by the year, but not the day.
It feels like that. That's how it seems to go in this show. They never address it outwardly, but they do seem to keep going back to the specific date in the calendar, but in different years.
If you think of what the last line of the episode is.
Yeah, that's true. But they also don't address where the fucking time machine came from, because he didn't invite it.
I get that it's tough, but a couple small throwaway lines here and there explain a lot of things if you put them in the script.
Yeah, because you have this new character going back in time for the first time. He'd have a million questions for him.
Yeah.
You just have him out, and then, of course, he's going to have to explain the rules and this and that. It's one scene. They could have fixed all that.
Yeah, a little exposition wouldn't have hurt.
And we find out that Paul Revere's goal is to find the guy that his daughter has been sneaking around with and murder him with this weapon that he's been forging.
Looks like a ball-peen hammer?
Yeah, a more painful one.
Yeah.
They probably should have done a better job of showing the weapon, because I really didn't get a good eye on it.
Yeah, it's kind of just shot dark.
Well, it's still enough for Dan to want to get out of there as soon as humanly possible. He's like, all right, cool. All right, well, if you change your mind, I'm Tom Cruise and this is Magic Johnson. We're the Blues Brothers and we'll keep an open line of communication. He's like, bye. And they leave the room and you just have that like final shot of Paul Revere standing alone in the room going, they're not brothers. So now we flash a little bit more forward into the day. It's like nighttime and the two are about to go to bed and
they're both dressed like it's Don't Wake Daddy.
But a couple things. A, why not go home to sleep? Like real home, modern day.
Yeah.
There's no need to stay there. It's probably muggy and full of bugs. And whose house is this?
Yeah, did they get a room?
Yeah. And if they did, how did they pay for it? Like,
Yeah.
they shouldn't have any, like, time-accurate currency?
I think Gordo's correct. I think it was ham, yeah.
You could get away with some ham, but yeah, just all of a sudden they're in a house and you go, well, like, how'd they get into the house? Why did they go back to their house? They can time travel. And it seems like time traveling is a very easy process. So just go home and sleep in your bed. Do this again in the morning.
Like fall asleep with the TV on in a nice bed with your air conditioner.
Maybe he used his knowledge of the future to come home and press someone into building him a house. So it's his house.
Well, we find out later, though, that they're looking at a house to buy for themselves.
That's true.
Yeah, because that one's too small. His current house is too small.
All right, that's fair. I see the workaround. That house only cost $4.
Chris is telling Dan, hey, you got to break up with this girl. And he very much does not want to do that. And in fairness, he does seem to legitimately, like, really like this girl a lot. He says he's in love with her, says that she's brilliant and intelligent, and she gets treated like garbage in this year. So, like, that bothers him. Like, he wants to be there for her. When he gets called out for tricking her with the Titanic soundtrack, he's like, I just use those things to, like, help me tell her how special she is, you know, when I can't find the words. And goes on about how, you know, in 1775, I have this amazing girlfriend, but in 2016, I'm a colossal screw up. He's like, well, you're not a screw up. You invented time travel. He's like, yeah, I mean, kind of. But, you know, and that comes up later on. In reality, he didn't discover the time travel. He kind of just found it in his dad's thing. So his dad discovered time travel and then, I don't know, I guess passed away or something and just never did anything with it.
I imagine they have to delve deeper into this in later episodes.
I would imagine, I don't know if it happens in this season. If this show was something that like had room to breathe, I would have assumed eventually we catch him in another time period that he just never came back.
But then how would the time machine make it back?
Could have made two. Or it's like Doc Brown, you know, you just, once you know how to make one.
That's true. He did make a train in the West.
But yeah, he said he found it in his possessions and now he's being told that he's selfish because he's choosing Deborah over like basically saving the country.
He is selfish. Fuck him.
He is.
Yeah, I get it. Like, I get that. They do a good job of making him sympathetic. Like, you see that, like, he basically does not like his life in modern day, and we see why. He doesn't have a lot going for himself, and he's lonely. And when he goes back there, there's a girl that he's in love with, and he's very happy to be with her. But yeah, when you know that, like, you've ruined the American Revolution, there are times where you have to sacrifice your heart here. Because at the end of the day, even if you stay with her, what's your life
Yeah.
if you don't fix it, you know?
You have a time machine. You don't go to the past and meet someone from the past. You go to the future, you get cool stuff, and then you come back and then you sell it as your own in current time. You become rich, and then you meet someone in your current time because now you're successful. He's an idiot.
Depending on how they want to play the whole past thing, which here is very loose, but in theory, if you take something from the past, it's going to affect the future.
That's why you take something from the future.
Yeah, but I think we're to believe that he actually genuinely falls in love with this person, right? And, you know, love is love, and you don't expect it. It's going to be who it's going to be. So it wasn't like he was going around looking for a person. So the future versus the past, I guess, doesn't really matter. It's whoever you find and you fall in love with.
So now they're arguing. Dan's getting at Chris and telling him how selfish he is. He's like, you know, you teach history. I brought you back in time, and you haven't even said thank you. And he's telling him, thank you for what? All that's happened is I've puked. I had an axe thrown at my head. I was treated like a slave, and I drank John Hancock's urine. He's like, he's my idol, Dan, my number one. And I drank the pee of the man who's my number one. And he's like, well, in fairness, you know, FYI, I think everyone had a squeeze in there. I don't think it was just his urine. Now, first, gross, but second, how many people could have realistically peed in that thing before it was full?
Right. That's
Especially they're all drinking. Yeah.
Maybe 2 guys, maybe 3 tops.
Would that have been two? Would that have been 2 guys, 1 cup?
So now in the next scene, it's the next morning, and we're back in like the woods. You see Chris with a horse, and off in the distance, we got Dan talking to Deborah. And when we cut to them, that's the whole like, hey, there's this really nice house I think we should get. It's $5. And like, oh my God.
I looked that up too, by the way. $1 in 1776 would be the equivalent of $36 now.
Oh, so even then, that's a great deal for a house.
Even then, the house would have been $180. Yeah.
Yeah,
But how much ham is it?
that's true.
Damn, good question, Joe. What's the ham conversion?
Current time or colonial time?
Type in USD to ham and see what pops up modern day, and then we can just go from there.
Also, throw the Stanley nickels in there. They might be of interest.
You don't want to recruit bucks?
So he's telling her, I'm not really ready for commitment right now because obviously with all the stuff going on, he doesn't know what the right thing to do is, even though he wants to be with her. But he's saying like, you should probably marry that blacksmith. He's a good guy and he could provide a life of stability for you and all the steel.
I mean, who doesn't want steel?
Well, she's saying that he's a dunce and she once saw him challenge a bag of grain to a duel.
And lost.
Yeah, because he's like, but did he win that duel? No.
See, I know, again, we talk about we don't want cutaways. I would have appreciated a cutaway to this scene.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This whole show's a cutaway, though. He's already in the past.
And now he's telling her, hey, like, there's something I have to tell you. And I don't think you would believe me, though. And she's like, well, go for it. And he's like, well, I'm from the future. I know that sounds crazy, but I was bored and I was lonely. So I found a way to travel through time, which, like, casually, I was bored. So, time travel. But then he said, like, he was going through all these different eras, which is good to know, I think. We brought that up earlier, too. But nothing felt right until he met her. And now he's just been, like, just going there to see her all the time.
Do you think this is the first time that ever was said and the last time it ever worked as a pickup line for somebody to a girl? It's like, oh, I'm actually from the future. Like, oh, okay. Like, that was the one time it worked.
I'm sure. Listen, there's a lot of really interesting people in the world. I bet it has worked before. And he's telling her, like, listen, I get it. Like, so it's far-fetched. She's like, no, I believe you. She's like, it actually makes a lot of sense. The way you talk and the songs and like, you're like behind me when I talk about all these things about how women should be equal and everyone deserving an opportunity. He goes, you're actually super ahead of your time. Like it actually happened in the future. Women can die in war now. It's like, that's so wonderful.
It is a weird thing to think of, like, that's progress.
Yeah, it is. It's just it's the wrong way to showcase that accolade.
Sure.
It's not so much that they are allowed to die in war. It's more that they are allowed to participate in it in general.
There is no concept of America right now to her. So he can't be like, oh, and women can vote because they don't vote.
Right, because they're used to a monarchy.
That's true.
So like, what other equivalent do you have other than like women can die at war? Maybe hold jobs?
As they continue to talk, we start to hear screaming in the background, and we see that Chris got abducted by a couple redcoats.
Chris has an amazing high-pitched scream, by the way.
Yes, every time he screamed was really funny. And I can't emulate. I don't know. Do any of you, can you guys go high-pitched? I can't.
Not like that.
No, I can't go high pitched. Not anymore.
So he's screaming on the back of a horse, with his hands tied up, and they jump on a horse to chase after them, with her driving the horse, of course, or riding the horse.
Driving.
She's at the wheel, and she's chasing after them, and then eventually realizes that she could probably, like, if she knows the woods well enough, so she kind of figured out, like, a path that she could go that would get to where they were headed quicker to cut them off.
And I do love how the whole time you're hearing him scream.
Yeah, we said it before. The scream's hilarious. And unfortunately, there's no way in hell I can emulate it if I tried.
Yeah, I don't think I can.
Yeah, I can't do high anymore.
So now as they're going through the woods and Deborah took that like side cut to like get around them, they get in front of where the British are headed. So they jump off the horse. Now they're facing the two of them. She pulls a gun out. No hesitation, just shoots one of the redcoats. he goes down. As he's going down, he just goes, "I love you, Jeremy." I don't know.
That fucking killed me.
I don't know if Jeremy was the other redcoat.
I think so, but Jeremy seems non-affected by his friend's death and last dying words of love.
No, he was more amazed that it was a woman that shot him. He goes, "A woman?" And then they start yelling, and eventually, he gets scared and he turns around and like takes off.
Out of curiosity, were these the same red coats that we ran into earlier in the episode?
I don't recall.
I think it's supposed to be the same two guys.
I didn't look into it to figure it out.
It didn't occur to me until right now, or I would have checked too.
I didn't look it up, but I would guess that the one who ran away probably is a through line in the whole season, because he now knows that Paul Revere's daughter murdered a British soldier, right? Like, that's got to have consequences later on.
Yeah.
So now Chris is like, untie me. And Deborah's like, oh my God, it's like a miracle. Like, Queequeg can talk. And that's when he has to confess, like, Deborah, I'm sorry. This is not Queequeg. This is my friend Chris from 2016. He came back to help me fix all the stuff here. And she goes, so in 2016, black people and white people are friends? And I like that at the same time, he goes, yes, exactly. And Chris goes, no, not at all.
I think through all of this and him saving him, they're friends now.
Yeah.
Sometimes you just got to go through some shit together. And that's that kind of bond will, turn.
I mean, that's how we became friends.
Yeah, I shot a British guy to save you.
Yeah.
Yeah, we went through second grade together.
By second grade, you mean being chased by the redcoats?
Sure.
That's another term for it, yeah.
Now, I will say this, and I actually have. Nobody here has actually been chased by a redcoat, right?
How? But why do you need to confirm that?
Okay. So I'm setting up a story. It was I didn't know this, but it was the anniversary of the Boston Marathon. Not the Boston Marathon, the Boston Massacre. Okay. And they do a recreation out in front of the old State House, which for people who don't know is a train station. So I come out of the train station. This is a couple of years ago. I come out of the train station, and that was the area in the little alleyway where I used to smoke a cigarette before I jump on the blue line to head home. So I went out and I started smoking a cigarette, and I see all these people and I go, wow, that's really weird. And then I turn immediately to my left to see a regiment of redcoats marching at me with bayonets, telling me to move out of the way because they were marching with their bayonets down. And I didn't know what to do. I was high as hell. So I started running. And then I figured out that it was the anniversary of the Boston Massacre. And I was chased off by some redcoats with their bayonets down at me.
Should have threw that tea in the harbor.
I liked it better when it was the idea that it could have been the anniversary of the Boston Marathon.
When it's just running.
When Paul Revere is on his horse, is going, the Kenyans are running. The Kenyans are running.
We had something similar to that once, Gordo, where it was not that far after the Boston Marathon bombing. Jeff, who listens, and I were on break in the Commons, and we just started hearing explosions, and everybody was so on edge. And then we saw smoke, and we were like, oh my God. And they were doing like a cosplay thing and shooting cannons for like a Revolutionary War thing. And we were like, guys, you couldn't have maybe postponed this to next year? Like, there was just bombings like 2 blocks from here. So we didn't run away, but we scurried quickly.
Listen, history doesn't wait.
That's weird to think, though. Can you imagine now in 200 years? Like, oh, in 200 years, on every 9/11 in New York, they, like, recreate the planes hitting or the, all these terrible tragedies. Because once time is so far away from it, right? Like, Boston Massacre, like, that's a terrible slaughter of people. And they're like, let's recreate it for fun, for tourists. Because it was so far long, like, that's ostensibly going to happen.
No one has personal connections to it anymore.
Right.
Yeah, but a historical battle's different than like a tragedy. Like, I know that's a tragedy too, because lots of like deaths, but it's not like a terrorist attack. You wouldn't recreate that.
I guess it depends. Like, where's the line? Like, they don't have like Holocaust reenactments, right?
I mean, they have Holocaust museums. Like,
well, yeah, that's different though. Like, it's one thing to like teach history versus like
I mean, they do war reenactments of World War II, but yeah, they don't have.
Do they do war reenactments of World War II? I was just gonna say, like, you see a lot of reenactments of like Revolutionary War, but not other wars.
Well, I think a part of that too, though, when you look at like Revolutionary War, it's a lot easier to reenact that stuff because of like just the tools they had back then. Like there's nothing that like is like near impossible to recreate.
Also, those wars happened here. World War II did not.
Yeah, so there is something
That's a
to
good
like,
point.
this is the exact location where this happened.
Except for Hawaii.
That would be a weird one to reenact.
Oh my god! It's just
A lot of planes today.
Ugh.
oh no.
So anyways, this is when Chris says, hey, I have a plan. You guys go back to 2016, leave me behind. And he's like, what, why? He's like, I'm going to start the American Revolution. So now Deborah's like, so I get to leave this miserable time? And it was like, I thought that was a little weird that they're just going to like take her out of history. Like, we've already talked about how things should affect the future. And I think plucking a human being out of a time period is like, should be a huge change. Yeah.
You're gonna kill an entire lineage of people, which is gonna extrapolate. Like, that's what the butterfly effect is. Like,
Yeah.
I get her point, though, because, like, you know, in a situation like this, you'd be like, well, if you go back, you know, you don't see your family or your friends or all these people.
Yeah, she doesn't like her life.
But she, like, yeah, she hates her life and she hates the time, so I can see her being gung-ho for it.
but the two people from the future shouldn't be.
Right, they should know better.
He could erase his own existence.
Chris is smart, but again, it's like, it's so tough to dissect time travel stuff. But yeah, there's a lot of things that don't really make sense here. But they're about to take off. Before they do, Chris says to Dan, hey, you know, I apologize. I misjudged you. And Dan says back to him, like, well, I was right about you. You're the type of guy that could help save history.
He didn't misjudge him, though. He judged him exactly the right way. He hasn't done anything to redeem himself.
He saved his life,
Yeah.
He put him in that situation.
but he still saved him.
And she saved his life.
I'm with Ferg. I don't think this main character has any redeemable qualities.
I wouldn't say that. I think he comes out very sympathetic when he explains his life and why he does the things he does.
He selfishly went back in time and ruined history because he wants to get laid. He's no redeeming qualities. He goes, oh, he's in love. No, in the end,
He's being played as someone who's legitimately in love. And he's explaining how insignificant he feels in life and going through all of, like, you know, time and traveling nonstop. He never found happiness until he met this girl.
no, that's bullshit because she's just very attractive and she gave him attention. That's the fact. He's not in love with her.
I mean, that's reaching. I mean, I think like he is legitimately in love with this girl. The fact that she's attractive is a tough gauge because it's a sitcom, so she was going to be attractive no matter what. But as they're about to part and they exchange words, I think this is one of the more funny, like, subtle things that happened was when he was like, hey, like, you know, before I leave, here, take this. He goes, what is it? He goes, weed. He's like, oh, makes sense. And just like the way it was delivered was like, it was so casual. I don't know. Something about it caught me off guard because I thought it was going to be some sort of it was like an Altoid type can. And like, I thought it was going to be like a device like, hey, if you need anything to contact me, use this. But it was just weed.
Yeah, it wasn't like another invention that his dad made.
He wants to contact him. He's going to carve something in a tree and then it'll like appear on the tree in the future. Like, oh, he needs my help.
That would be smart.
So now we cut to Dan and Deborah in the duffel bag together. And he's saying, ready to go to the future. And then now they're back into modern day. And they get out of the bag. First thing she does, he goes, it smells wonderful here. He goes, does it? He shouldn't be surprised. He did acknowledge when they first went back in time. He told Chris, like, it smells terrible here. So
He just spent a week in that time, too.
yeah, spending your whole life in an area that smells like shit and then transporting somewhere where it doesn't smell like shit anymore. It must be an amazing smell. But after that, she, you know, looks around and she notices something and she starts walking off. It's like, hey, where are you going? And Deborah reads like this plaque on a statue and it says, Chris Parrish killed at the Battle of Lexington, April 24th, 1775. That's tomorrow. And then you pan up and you see that that's Chris, the Chris from the episode, and it's a statue of him now. So we find out that he somehow died in battle.
But why does that affect the future instantly when everything else doesn't?
listen, time travel issues are a problem on the show, obviously. We established when Chris was teaching his class, the fact that Paul Revere missed his ride didn't seem to translate over. And now here, there are a bunch of holes. And I think that's one of those things that, like, I don't know how much of a pass you can give it for being a comedy, but you understand that, like, they're really just trying to put you in the premise, and you're trying to be sold on the premise and less the logic behind it.
With time travel, you need to establish a set of rules early. So what should have happened at the beginning is, he should have affected the future. And then maybe this guy's British, but life sucks for him. So he takes him back. He's like, this will improve. This isn't how this is supposed to be. You're supposed to be a learned scholar and a teacher and all this other stuff. And then he brings him back. If you establish that anything you do in the past affects the future instantly, that's fine as long as it's consistent throughout the show. When he does stuff in the past and it doesn't affect it in the beginning of the show, but then we just see something and then it instantly does at the end, I'm not okay with that.
It goes to show you the difference, like, if you're along for the ride or if you're just, like, at the end of a show, where my first thought when I saw the statue was, I wonder if they let him keep the statue, because the show got canceled, and it'd be kind of cool to have that prop given to you. Like, do you want a statue of you? I'm sure it's just lightweight plastic.
That's like if you have, like, a little, like, basement bar or something, you'd have to, like, what else do you do with that? You can't leave it in, like, your living room.
Put it in the backyard.
Yeah, no, I get what you're saying. There's inconsistencies. We never even got to find out, like, was there a significance to the tea and the fish and chips? Like, we don't even know. But that was the conclusion of the episode. Did you feel that was enough of a cliffhanger to be like, oh?
I'll get to it in my green light or cancel.
So I think it was weird, like, to talk out of turn a little bit with, like, the future episodes. It looks like they kind of do different eras almost every episode. I don't remember if it was, like, multi-episodes per, but it's weird. It was weird to see, like, episode 2, they're still dealing with this. This is like a cliffhanger, but then they, like, start traveling to new destinations almost every other episode. It was weird that this was, like, stretched out. I don't know. I'm still kind of not on board with the idea of it not being a season per location. I think they should have told more complete stories that way.
I agree. Also, the way this show works, you know that they intended to go longer, and you know season 1 ends on a cliffhanger. So even if you went back to watch this out of curiosity, like, you know you're not going to get an ending, and that sucks.
Yeah.
Yeah, the problem, too, is, like, this was originally supposed to be, like, a 12 or 13 episode season, and then Fox cut it down, so it only got 9 to begin with. So even, like, within this season, there was probably stuff that didn't happen that was supposed to, so maybe it didn't end on a cliffhanger because it ended so quickly. It didn't even get its full thing.
Did 13 get made, or only 9 got made?
I don't think so. It sounded, from what I read, it sounded like they only ended up making 9.
Yeah.
I wonder if Al Capone is the cliffhanger for the last episode. Like, out of nowhere, it's like, you see? I'm like, ooh.
Yeah.
I need a whole episode of Old Timey Talk.
I'm sure people would love that. Yeah.
What, us do a whole show?
No, just an episode of this show when they're in Al Capone.
Oh, I thought you wanted us to do a whole episode in Old Timey Talk. I'm like, that's...
Yeah, I don't know about that, young fella. I don't know how long I can keep this up.
Be quite the undertaking.
Yeah.
So, there's not a lot of info on this show outside of it, so might as well just, to not drag it out any longer into the green light or cancel. So I'll go in the order. I see you, Joe, starting with you.
I've found doing this show as long as we have that sometimes a bad show can make a bad day so much worse, and a good show can give you a bright spot in your day. I had a lot of stuff going on today. We're in a heat wave right now. There's hobo encampments being built outside my front. There was a lot, and I put this on.
Our pets' heads are falling off.
Yeah, I barely had time to even get to it today, and I smiled through this whole thing. I'm 1,000% on board that the logic makes no sense. Time travel is going to tie you up in knots, but I love the idea of this. I enjoyed the cliffhanger. I wanted to see the second episode. I'm sure this is going to be exactly like Ghosted, where I bought the season so I could watch it, and then like a week later they were like, now on Hulu, so wait a week and you'll be able to watch it all for free. The only thing, and we mentioned it a few times, I'm just sad that we didn't get Tim Robinson as Al Capone in this episode, because that would have made it so much better and so much more over the top. I loved it. Ham, Casper Jackson, what's not to love? This is a green light.
Ferg.
Yeah, I'm gonna go the opposite of Joe. I found the main character very unlikable, and then the time travel inconsistencies really bugged me. I don't know. I feel like this would have worked better. I'm going to borrow a Gordo line from the early days. This would have worked better as a movie and not a series. Just this is as the plot of a movie, which, you know, we've gotten this as the plot of a movie, but just didn't do it for me. I didn't enjoy this show very much. It had a couple jokes that made me laugh, but not enough for me to pass it. So cancel.
Nick.
Yeah, I love time travel anything, really. You're hard pressed to disappoint me when it comes to it. I'm kind of a hybrid between Joe and Ferg right now because I agree where it seems like nobody else really seemed to dislike the main character. I don't like him at all. He's very unlikable, and I don't think they do a good job of making you like him. And it's not even that he's supposed to be unlikable. Like, I think he is supposed to be likable. He's just not for some reason. Having said that, I really enjoy the concept. I'm going to ignore the time travel blunders because they're just so easy to make and they're so hard to work around, especially in a sitcom like this. You can't have the leash that short because then you're just you're restricting what you can do. Obviously, there are things they could have done to make it just, close the gap a little bit, but I'm just going to ignore it because I did really enjoy the rest of the show. I thought it was funny through and through, and it left me wanting to watch more of it. So, yeah, it's a green light, not without its issues. It's not the hardest green light I've ever had, but it's definitely a green light, and I definitely want to keep watching.
Gordo.
Yeah, I didn't have a problem with this episode at all. The cliffhanger worked on me because I want to see what happens in episode 2. It was funny enough. If they did more of the pumpkin bum, I would have laughed a little bit more. But it was funny enough. It was likable enough. But I mean, the only real reason why I want to see episode 2 is to see if it gets better or resolve the cliffhanger. So. I mean, for that reason, that's a green light.
So, I'm actually, I'm going with the majority. A lot of the time travel stuff bothered me because it's illogical. Okay. We talked about it. It's tough, especially time travel in general, because there's always, even in the good examples, there's always going to be loopholes, right? You could say the same about Terminator or the Marvel movies or all this stuff, right? I think in essence, the show is funner than I thought it was going to be. When I first turned it on, I was like, here we go. But it went by surprisingly fast for a regular kind of length 22-minute sitcom. And I just thought it was, I don't know, an easy, fun watch. And it was kind of interesting. And I wouldn't mind seeing where it went. Like we said, it kind of ends on a little bit of a cliffhanger. So I kind of want to know what happens next. So yeah, I'm going to give it the green light. So with that in mind, congratulations to making history. 4 out of 5. So you get the green light. You live on to see another episode. I want to thank everyone who listened to us. Go to S1E1pod.com. That's where you can find all the links to all our social medias. Rate, review, subscribe. Follow us on Instagram and X at S1E1pod. Yeah, do everything. We appreciate it. We'll catch you again next week. Have a happy 4th of July. Have a burger for me. See you next week. Thank you. Goodbye.
I think we got the best. Bye-sies.